Worried about the amount of cash in your business over Christmas? Well, watch on. As a business accountant, my team and I spend all day long helping business owners on their journey. And of course, cash flow is a primary concern for a lot of business owners, and therefore an area that we get involved with. And I wanted to do this video because I think it's something we talk about a lot in the small business world, is sometimes depending on your type of business, the festive period, so it probably starts, I don't know, maybe late November to late Jan, but particularly over the December, can be a really tight time for a lot of business cash flow. And that can be because of many reasons. It can be because your clients and customers are going away for 2 weeks and they forgot to pay you, or it can be you're billing a big corporate and their accounts payable people are off for Christmas, they shut down, or there's all these actual practical reasons. And then there's other things like people are just busy and they forget to pay you, and then you're off for a couple of weeks, you don't generate any extra income, suddenly you've not got enough money. There can be all these reasons, but whatever happens, it can be a tight crunch. And one of the biggest issues we see with a lot of owners is they just don't know about it. And I think that's where we're going to start in a minute. But before we get into it, if you like these type of videos, make sure to click the subscribe button and the bell below so you get notified whenever we release more videos just like this one. So let's start, as I say, with planning. So I know it's going to sound obvious. Yeah. Accountant says you need to plan, but ultimately you don't have to do anything crazy. Like you can do cash flow forecasts, as it known, where you can plan out your kind of up to a year's quite nice, just to look at each month, what goes in, what goes out, and what would your bank balance look like if we made some assumptions and we guessed, what would your bank look like? But what I would say is just do it in the short term for now. Take literally, December, January, February, or November, December, January, February, wherever we are when this goes out and you're watching it, and just have a look and say, okay, this is my bank balance right now. This is what I expect to come in. This is what I expect to go out. What does it look like? And then you get some clarity around whether you need to be worried or not. And a lot of owners kind of wing it, and then they're like, oh, it's getting a bit near Christmas. Am I going to have enough to pay my team's wages? Am I going to have enough money to pay myself or other suppliers? And then this problem, you end up being part of the problem then, where you're not paying people. So planning is the key. It doesn't need to actually take very long, and it doesn't need to be super accurate. It just needs to give you a feel for where you're going to end up, because like a lot of these plans, when you do numbers, they never survive kind of contact with the enemy, as it's known. When you get in there and things happen, it never quite works out. There's always extra bills you didn't anticipate, or somebody doesn't pay you, or you might be lucky and you get an extra payment you didn't expect. So, but just have a rough idea. So clarity, number one, your action point for this is go and get yourself a plan. And if you do want help with just putting it into like a spreadsheet or something, I'll link it in the notes below, but there's a free resource that's downloadable from our website. You don't even have to stick an email address in, nothing. You can literally just download it, and it's a really basic spreadsheet that will help you do that exercise. So number one, plan. So then, having planned, then have a look at your payment dates. Now, I'm going to do a massive disclaimer here and say to you, I am never ever going to tell you to pay somebody late. And the reason for that is, in the small business world, there is a massive issue with late payment. The Federation of Small Business, or a big body if you've not come across them, have been campaigning on this for ages about, especially some of the bigger boys down the chain who kind of dictate their payment terms and pay incredibly late. It causes a massive cash flow problem. And actually Xero, so the accounting partner, Xero, who produce a piece of software that a lot of owners use, they did a study in 2019, so that's pre-COVID, and it showed that the average amount of money owed to a small business owner at any one time was over £23,000. So you can see it's quite a big deal, late payment. So firstly, don't late pay anybody, because that's obviously an option, isn't it? If you wanted to increase the amount of money in your bank over the Christmas period, just don't pay anybody, but don't do that. Absolutely do not do that. And I don't think you want to get a reputation for doing that either. But what a lot of owners we work with have is they have a reputation for being very prompt payers, which is great. And quite a lot of them also like to pay their taxes well in advance. So they might have had a year end and the corporation tax payment isn't due yet, but they just want to get out of the way. Or they pay their staff on the 30th, and then the money they've deducted on behalf of their tax, they want to hand over on the 30th just because it's there, it's easy, let's get out of the way. However, the actual due dates for those payments can be a lot later. So what I'm saying to you is have a look and see what you can pay on time rather than early, because it's amazing. We did this exercise with a couple of clients recently where we realised they were paying their tax 2 weeks early, because the way it works without getting too deep into one subject, when you've got staff, you pay them their bit, and the bit that's the tax gets handed over by you to the revenue. But you don't actually have to hand that over until the middle of next month. But a lot of people do it when they pay their staff because they're on the bank. So doing that can add another couple of weeks of cash flow. And over Christmas, that's quite a big deal sometimes when the world shuts down for a couple of weeks in a lot of places. So think about that. when is stuff due. If you pay suppliers normally instantly, obviously that would be lovely, especially on the smaller end of the scale to pay people pre-Christmas. But if you've got a couple of larger corporates that you would normally pay for, I don't know, your stationery or something, and the bills aren't due till January, well, don't pay them until January, this particular point. So have a look at payment dates. That's number 2 action point for you. And then number 3, talking about paying bills. One of the things I think that gets underused sometimes, because what we look at, I think we all know debt's bad, right? That's the thing. In business, debt isn't always bad. In actual fact, debt's quite a good thing in a lot of places. But managed debt that's affordable and repayable and can help your cash flow. And one of the easiest, quickest ways to do that when you're very small is using a business credit card. Because if you pay for, let's say you're making purchases in December, you're going to get December to make your purchases, then they'll give you a bill in January, and then you get another period of time to pay that credit card off. And if you pay it off in full, there is no interest charge. So it's an amazing way to boost cash flow if you're not using it for a short period of time. Works really, really well if you've got like nothing happening really in December, or you predict it's going to be slow, but in January and February it's going to be really busy. It's an awesome way and takes next to no effort to do. And also, you do get the sort of buyer's protection that you get with a credit card if you're buying things online and that. So really, really good one. But yeah, I'm not advocating that you go and just a massive splurge on your business credit card. You want to do it sensibly, but it will give you that cash flow benefit of having more money in your bank account for a period of time. Now, the other thing you can do is if your plan looks really bad and you're like, do you know what, I need more, I need a couple of months worth here, you could always pay your credit card late and or say in stages and pay some interest. But the other thing that might be more affordable is you might need to look at a bank overdraft, and that's worth talking to the banks about. But again, when we're talking about best practice, I'd never advocate to you to go and get an overdraft to live in, because what 2008, 2010 taught us, and a lot of the owners we worked with at that particular time, is that the banks can withdraw those overdrafts on a whim. So if they don't like them, they can go no, and then you're in a problem where you're used to living in it. So not keen on overdrafts, and actually we see a lot less of them these days than we used to, but they are available. So if you do need them for a period of time, do think about that. But it goes back to, if you've got a plan, you know whether it's a good idea or not. Don't use it as like a last minute thing, because if it turns out you're just going to keep going into the overdraft, it's not going to be for you. So action point there is make sure you've got a business credit card if you need one and it's to hand, and if you do need to arrange that overdraft, definitely give yourself some time, because there can be a relatively lengthy process to go through to get those approved. Let's talk taxes then. Accountant and taxes. We like taxes on this channel, but if you've got taxes due, so the big one is on the 31st of January 2022, there is a big tax deadline for personal tax returns. So if you're an owner and you've taken dividends, that's where your dividend tax is payable. If you're a sole trader, that's when you're going to end up paying your main tax bill. And if you're a landlord, you'd pay it there. If you've got, and there might be other reasons why you pay it, but ultimately in the business world, small business world, you're going to have a tax bill to pay on the 31st of January if you've taken a relative amount of money or earned a relative amount of money. And that can be quite a cash crunch just after this period we're talking about. Previously, if we were talking about this last year, we'd have talked to you about the fact that COVID allowed you to spread those payments over 12 months. That's great, but you might have been spreading them over 12 months now, and as a result, not got the money to pay your current tax bill. So it can be quite a hit. But do know, if you really can't pay those taxes, there is a time to pay arrangement you can make. You can ring HMRC and speak to them. We had an inspector in the office the other day, actually, looking to collect for a client who wasn't getting in contact with them. And actually, they're in a really good place at the moment. They will have a good discussion with you. They're offering quite good terms, but please do speak to them. The worst thing you can do is just ignore them, because they will come for you then. And they're actually generally, the inspectors and people on the end of the phone are actually really nice people. It's just a case of having that conversation with them honestly about what you can afford and figuring out from there. So do make those calls if you need to. But otherwise, make sure you get your tax return prepared early so you know what that tax bill is. You might be panicking for no reason, right? So just get it done before Christmas, because there was about 2,500 people last year that did their tax returns on Christmas Day. Probably don't want to be one of those people. I think maybe it's a hard-working accountant or something that does that on that day. But yeah, get your tax return early, figure out what that tax bill is. If you do need to delay it, make that call. But that also, those times to pay arrangements also work for corporation tax, VAT and PAYE, stuff like that. So if you've got other taxes, think about making those calls as well so you can get that arranged. So that's the action point there. Make sure that to know what those tax bills are and call if you need. So while we're talking about repayments of things and spreading the load, if you took out a bounce back loan during COVID, which I know a lot of business owners did, you're probably right now repaying them. But just a reminder, there is a thing called pay as you grow, and that was kind of an add-on at the end. And they said, look, we're actually going to let you delay your payments for 6 months. We're going to give you interest-free periods if you need them, or you can spread it over 10 years and make those repayments tiny. So utilize those things if you're going to need them for a period. So let's say Q1 of 2022, quarter one in 2022 is looking bad. You might think, actually, if I wasn't repaying this BBL, as I know, bounce back loan, I'd have been all right. and then you can make that call to your bank and see if you can arrange it. All the banks are slightly different how they manage it. Some are online, some aren't. Just go speak to them. You probably Google pay as you grow in your bank name, and you might see instantly an FAQ or something that tells you how to get on and do that. But that is worth considering. Action point there if you've got a bounce back loan. And then there's two ones really relating to you getting paid by your customers. One's a short-term fix, one's a long-term fix. The short one is make sure you're on top of your credit control. Already told you about what Xero said. 23,000 orders is the average amount that a small business is owed. So you know if you sell on credit, obviously if you're a retail online business, you get paid instantly. This is irrelevant to you, which is why I've put it on the end. But if you are a business that bills people and gives people time to pay, you need to be chasing early on in December, because people will go on holiday, they will shut down over Christmas. You quite likely might not get paid unless they're on top of it. And it's not always the case, but if you imagine the smaller business and the owners are under pressure, sometimes the ones that need the polite nudge, but are also probably the easiest ones to get the money out of, because they will actually want to pay you, whereas some of the corporates would probably not think 2 minutes about just, and then again, I'm not tarring them all with the same brush, but history shows that they're normally the ones that go, well, the accounts department shut down, so unlucky mate, that's the case. So do get on top of that credit control early, send statements, send one thing we see owners doing quite often that works quite well is sending personal emails or handwritten notes on statements and things like that to really just jog that person's memory to pay you and put some personal ownership on it. It does seem to make a difference, but yeah, do make sure you've got a procedure in, set that date, this is your action point, set that date in your diary to carve that time out to really chase those invoices and do it. No one really likes talking about money in my experience, but it needs to be done for you to be able to function properly and get paid for what you've done. So that's a big one on credit control, and that's the short-term fix, because again, experience shows us you doing that will generate some money. Even if it's not as much money as you hoped, you will generate some money just by reminding people politely to pay you. The slightly longer term one is, I would ask you to have a look at, if you look during the exercise and think, wow, I'm owed a lot of money here, and sometimes it doesn't look a lot individually, but you just add it up and before you know it, it's a lot of money, is think, do I need to be offering credit terms to people? The amount of businesses we speak to, and they're like a service-based freelancer, and they're giving someone 30 days to pay an invoice. But why 30? Well, because it's the done thing. Is it the done thing? Oh, well, my mate says that maybe. It's like, well, that's fine for them. Why not 14? If it's 14, why not 7? You might even find that actually you can look at it next time and think, actually, no, I'm going to redo my services. I want some up front, then some payable later on a 14-day invoice or something like that on completion. So there are ways to do this, and you should just go for it and know your price, know where you are, know what your payment terms are, and say, no, this is it. Don't get me wrong, sometimes you have supply chains that are going to dictate to you what the terms are, and if you want to work with them, that's where you are. But I find even in those circumstances, through experiences of the owners we've worked with, you can push back and demand certain things if they really want to work with you. So again, it's a toss-up depending on the relationship you've got. But yeah, just think longer term for 2022. Can I change this? I'm fed up. If you're fed up with chasing debt, try not to be in debt. It's you just change those payment terms. That's the key takeaway from that action point. Can you change your services and your terms to make sure that you get paid quicker, advance? Think about direct debits. Go cardless if you've not heard of them. Check them out. They're a direct debit collection thing. Very, very simple way of collecting them. There are others available, of course, but that's kind of the market leader. So there you go. Some real quick ideas there to look at keeping that cash pot in your business healthy over this kind of festive period. So if you know anybody that needs to know this information, please do share it with them. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.